Alright, today's second review is going to be of Sisu Road to Revenge, which I gave an 8 out of 10 to. I thought this was just a little bit better than the first film. Now, the first film, I can't remember if I've ever reviewed it on my channel. I think I have, but it might have been one of those ones that I just rated, and because I wasn't really doing the reviews at the time that I was watching the movie, I might not have done it, so I might go back and just review it again anyway, just to see if my opinion of it has changed. But I felt like the first one was kind of just like, it was from the creators of John Wick, and I do believe this one was the same, right? If I'm not mistaken. But this one felt like it had a little bit more substance to it, like a little bit better of a storyline. Now, obviously, in the beginning, in the first one, it was just kind of like run and gun kill type thing, and eventually it just kind of like it escalated to the point where it was just kind of like a little silly by the end of the movie. I found a little too over the top. Not to say that this movie didn't have its moments, like with the tank flipping scene where he is propelling, like rocket propelling the tank, and flips it back over the Soviet border patrol. Like the certain parts with the planes coming in where he uses the wooden planks from his house to um like launch the plane off of the truck or whatever that he's driving and explode it. So it did have its ridiculous moments, but it also had its kind of cool, like, more believable action moments, like him getting shot once instead of, a whole bunch of times, or, I think in the first one he was hung at one point, wasn't he? And then somehow he ended up surviving. So it almost seemed like he was immortal in the first one. But in this one, it didn't really seem like they needed to push it that far exactly. Like, I think he only really gets shot once, and then in the one scene in the train, he's being tortured or whatever, but it doesn't seem like it's so far-fetched in this one that he would have died from his injuries. Obviously, he's not going to be in great condition, and I don't really think that he could do some of the stuff that he did, but it was a little less, kind of like, oh my god, there's no way he would live through this, right? Like, people get tortured and they live through it. So I mean, it's not necessarily like the most far-fetched idea that he could have lived through this time around. However, I did feel like this movie was a bit more personal. So I guess the Soviets, um, or the Soviet army is taking over Finland and pushing people out of their homes. So Finland's getting a little bit smaller, obviously, right, at this point in time. Um, Russia is a really huge place. I think it is the largest, um, is it the largest country in the world? I think it might be. Um, I'm not entirely sure if it is, so don't quote me on that, but I believe it might be. Um, so yeah, obviously, I don't know if this is like real history or not, but Russia is a really big place, so it is quite possible that they did take over certain cities, obviously. And this was just after the war in 1946 when this story is taking place. So he has to cross back over the into Russia from Finland, and this would have been after the first movie, obviously, right? So this is like right after. So he seems a little bit nervous when he is going over the border because I think he's afraid that they would have known who he was. Um, so our main character is played by Jorma Tamilia, and his name is Atomi Korpi, and he was a Finnish soldier. I'm not really sure what his rank was, um, but he was pretty high up there anyway. And then Stephen Lang, who played Yegor Dragunov in this one, so he was a Russian soldier who was seemed like a pretty brutal guy. Not gonna lie. Didn't really care who he killed. I guess he just took orders and followed them no matter what. Didn't matter. Men, women, children. He was not opposed to killing anybody. And then we had Richard Brake, who I think is a phenomenal actor. He's been in a lot of the Rob Zombie films, and I just think he does a good job no matter what role he plays. He always seems to kind of be like almost kind of like a evil guy, but sometimes he plays a little bit of a different role, but he always has that little bit of an evil edge to him. And he was a KGB officer, so he was, I think, even higher rank than Dragunov. And so he takes Dragunov out of the prison in Siberia and tells him to go finish the job to uh, kill uh, Atomi Corpi. um, and obviously, he knows that this isn't going to be any easy task, right? And I guess, obviously, Dragunov, as we know, was the one that killed Corpi's wife and children. So we know that this is going to be some sort of battle, and obviously, Corpi is not going to want to kill him quickly. He's going to want him to suffer. Um, and obviously, take out as many other men as he can in the process, right? So I do like this film. It was very similar to the first one where they do it in chapters, and I love those kinds of movies because it just, it's building up to something really intense at the end. And so I would say my favorite scenes were probably what was it? If I wish I could remember the names of all the chapters, but where they're on like the highway and they have all the bikers around him and he's able to take them out one by one. And probably the coolest kill was it reminded me of like Indiana Jones kind of style where he puts the grenade in the spokes of the bike and the bike flips and just blows up. I was like, oh my god. And the one kill he does where he uh, traps the guy under the tires and flings him through the window of the Jeep behind him. I was like, okay, so these are a little bit more unique kills than the first one, I have to admit. And he seemed to be a little bit smarter about things because even in the one scene with the planes, now obviously when he goes to his house in the beginning, that's a little bit sad because you can kind of hear like the memories of stuff happening behind him and like the children laughing and so on and so forth. So you know that he's not in the best headspace, obviously, and he takes all the logs from his house and marks them down with the Roman numerals. So I guess he's planning to obviously move his house back to Finland, right, and build anew, as we see at the end of the film, right. Um, but yeah, the fact that he was able to keep all these logs intact during the entire movie was absolutely incredible. So the plane scene, he was actually pretty smart because he comes to the very edge of the forest after he destroys the first plane and like waits and listens. Now, obviously, he can't hear the plane, so he thinks that he's gotten away scot-free, right? And then all of a sudden he's driving down this giant open road and he sees you can see the second plane like just hovering just below the cliff line. And I was like, oh my god, this guy's like super smart for following him that way and staying out of sight. And then all of a sudden the plane turns around and runs out of bullets, and I'm like, okay, is this guy gonna try to like kamikaze? He doesn't exactly do that. He ejects before trying to take out the truck, but it was smart to shoot out the one strap or whatever on the boards and use it to project the plane over the truck. So I'm not saying that would obviously work. That was probably one of the more ridiculous things in the movie, but again, this movie is known for its a little bit over the top kind of stuff, kind of action. But it wasn't nearly as ridiculous as the first one again. So then what was after that? I think after that was when he oh yeah, cuz what is it? The bomber plane that comes along and drops all the bombs, and then he has to drive the truck into the water, and then he floats all the boards to the surface and he uses them as a raft to get back to Finland, and then finds the tank on the shore, attaches all the boards to the tank, uh, flips the tank over the Soviet border blockage, and that's when he gets onto the train and all of the Soviet soldiers that are on the train. It was kind of funny watching that whole scene where they're like, the train would shake and their arms would kind of fall off the bed or whatever, and he would have to kind of like slowly maneuver around them. And this is after he's been tortured. So already he's in a lot of pain, right? And then the bottle falls and he has to step on the glass and then roll under the bed. And then he goes through all the train cars. And of course, at this point, Dragunov is like, I want my money and I want to get out, sort of thing. And of course, the KGB officer is like, oh, you'll get what's coming to you, so on and so forth. So I think Dragunov kind of figured that he was going to be screwed over, but he ends up killing all of the other officers or whatever at the table and gets his money. But he doesn't. He doesn't. It doesn't end well for him in the end because he sees that Corpy is coming for him and detaches the train. And of course, Corpy has the missile attached to the one train car, so launches himself towards the other train car. And then at the very end, he launches the missile into the final train car where Dragunov is, and it looks like the missile's going to stop, but then all of a sudden, it like just propels enough and goes like right into Dragunov's face and then blows up the whole train car. And I was like, oh my god. I don't think it was like a nuclear sized missile, but it was a big enough missile to create a pretty big shockwave. And then of course at the end, he comes in by train and you can hear you can see the Finnish soldiers sitting there at the Finnish border, and you can hear like the gunfire and stuff and the screams, and then Corpy rolls up on like the old train car that you would like hand pump to get down the tracks, and he has all the boards to his house there, so he decides to go and build his house anew. And then all these people show up, and it looks like they're gonna fight him, but then they ask if they can help. So there was this little kind of like end credit scene where it shows all of them building the house, and then it seems like he has a group of people with him now. So I'm kind of anticipating a third film where this group is going to go out and do some more damage to some people. And I'm not really sure what kind of story they're going to create out of this because it seems like he's taking his revenge, but I feel like there's going to be obviously somebody else come after him because he's taken out the Germans in the first movie, and now he's taken out the Soviets, part of the Soviets in the second movie. So I feel like he is in for a pretty big war if they do decide to do a third movie. So I am excited to see exactly where the story goes because I feel like it's kind of a cliffhanger for a third movie for sure. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, I did give this one an 8 out of 10 if I didn't already say that. And I think I've pretty much explained everything I can about this movie. I guess the final fight scene was pretty intense, and yeah, because it seemed like Dragunov was going to win when he's hitting him with the lead pipe, but mostly got him in like the arms and stuff, hit him in the head a couple of times. So again, like I said, a little bit more believable that he could survive some of this until the very end scene, maybe. I was like, okay, I don't think you would necessarily have the capacity to launch the bomb any further, but again, it was for the movie because obviously he's supposed to be a little bit like immortal, kind of the same thing like with the John Wick series, obviously, where he's a little bit, yeah, the immortality factor there is kind of, you can kind of see it a little bit more in this movie. I guess these two movies and in the John Wick movies, but yeah, definitely, they definitely do a lot with their characters in these kinds of movies to make them seem a little bit more, a little bit too immortal at sometimes, I guess. But still, I did enjoy this more than the first one, so I have to give credit where credit is due. A little bit better story, a little bit more substance, not quite as insane as the first one. Um, yeah, like I just felt like he could survive this better than the first movie for sure. Um, anyway, I guess that's it. I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.